Hey everyone, it's Carter King. If you're an educator, a leader, or just a parent who wants to teach kids about space, check out my newest book, Carter's Journey Through Space. It's available now on Amazon, Target, and bookstores everywhere. Come explore the universe with me.
Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create environments where people thrive. Through real conversations, practical strategies, and powerful stories, we equip leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself to build cultures rooted in purpose, performance, and authenticity. Because culture isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. This is the Contagious Culture Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create ecosystems and environments where people thrive. Look, today's guest, she's killing it. She is killing it. She is a trauma-informed leadership and emotional intelligence coach, licensed mental health counselor, and the founder of Intentional Healing and Wellness. Andrea has spent years helping leaders, schools, organizations all across the world understand something that a lot of people still miss. You cannot create healthy, high-performing teams if the leadership at the top has not done its own internal work. Look, she's helping you be better so that you can ultimately lead better. Her work sits at the intersection of emotional intelligence, resilience, workplace wellness, and culture change, all of the things that we want. This is going to be a phenomenal and powerful conversation about burnout, all things self-awareness, psychological safety, emotional capacity, and in my opinion, the kind of leadership that helps people do their best work without losing themselves in the process. Andrea, how you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. Hi, Kyle. Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here with you, excited to have this conversation, and really looking to serve you people, today with some insights and strategies and tools and personal experiences that I believe will forward them in their work.
I
So
love
thank you
it.
for having me.
Of course. And I think a lot of times at the beginning, we sit in these titles and all these accomplishments and all of these different things. But I love at the beginning of episodes at times to pull back the curtain and just ask that person, without all these titles and all these different things that we're recognized by online, like, who are you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So who am I? I am a Brooklyn girl, um, you know, New Yorker, native New Yorker. I am a courageous, trusting, vulnerable leader who has really set out to grow and learn and heal
That's good.
and continuously hold space for people to do the same.
That's good.
I am a former school psychologist. I spent 14 years in the school system
Yeah.
serving the New York City public schools. And really, it was there that a lot of who I am today was activated, really seeing what is going on, out in the system, what challenges are
Yeah.
there. And with that, I'm also, the product of a New York City public school. And so I, think about this work and think about growing up in Brooklyn and the challenges and the obstacles and the hardships and the struggles.
Yeah.
And, I'm just a woman in midlife trying to figure it out and, navigate and have fun while I do it.
I love that. I love that. And I think there's so many misconceptions in regards to mental health, trauma-informed leadership, all of these different things. We all like to diagnose problems, and we don't have the clinical or professional background to even diagnose. And we name all of these different issues without really having the opportunity to talk to someone like you and really pull the curtain back on like what is going on. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
start there. Like what is happening? I feel like when I was younger, all of these issues didn't exist. I feel like I was a happy kid. I feel like there are certain thoughts and things that I never even thought about. Like, what is going on in our society and our communities today?
Oof. Well, I personally believe that we are currently navigating a mental health crisis.
Mm.
that is not being talked about much. We see it in different ways. We see parts of it presenting and playing out. But we are a culture that is in crisis right now. And I
Mm.
think that, we are coming off of the heels of the pandemic and the impact that created. Another thing that people don't like to really talk about anymore now that it's
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
But there's real trauma and effect as a result of going through that time and what it created. Also, I think that what we are going through now, what's happening is we are inundated and really overexposed to a lot. There is a lot of social media is a lot brings us information in so many different ways that when we were, growing up, we didn't have the exposure the way that people have it now.
Of course.
So, once upon a time, there was one TV, and I might date myself, one big wooden box TV in the middle of the living room with a few channels to choose from, and that was the primary source of
Mm.
news and exposure to real life. And now we have multiple apps.
It's good.
We are on our telephones, we are on iPads, and all over the place, being inundated with all of this
Yeah.
information, a lot of which once upon a time we weren't exposed to.
Interesting.
So the nature of, violence and all different things. So I think we are overstimulated. There's
Mm.
a lot of external stimuli. There's a lot of negative trauma and violence and different things that we once upon a time had a filter to. And now we're just constantly inundated. And so, yeah, all of those things I think leaves us in a very vulnerable place. And most people are struggling.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I even remember growing up, like my parents wouldn't let me listen to certain music, wouldn't let me watch certain TV shows. The only time that we watched TV was in the living room, and there were only certain days and certain programs that we could be able to watch. And even the video games, I feel like back then were just completely different in so many different ways. So I try to manage that, having two young ones at home to still make them aware that, hey, technology is so important in our educational systems and where you're
Yeah.
going, while still monitoring and creating a balance between, like, hey, like, go outside or do some
Yeah.
Legos or do a puzzle today.
Totally.
So what do we do, in our communities, not just as parents, but as professionals, as leaders? I guess I want to start here from a trauma-informed leadership perspective. What do you wish people understood immediately? Because I don't think that a lot of people really understand why that's so important.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most important things that I speak to clients about and really preach is this ability to hone in on awareness for
Mm.
self, for environment, for relationships, for the culture that we
Yeah.
create. Because by being aware of what's happening, we are able to really have a positive influence, and not just positive, but impactful, I would say, because I don't
Exactly.
like the charge positive, negative. Um, I think it's really important to be mindful of everyone who's listening, your individual distractions, because we all have them.
Mm.
Right. And I think that when we are aware of our own distractions, we really get to be mindful of how we are sort of caught in the rat race and don't even realize it.
That's
And that
good.
looks different for everybody. For some, it's social media. For some, it's Netflix binges. For some, it's sleeping. For some, it's shopping. Right. And no shame if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I check, right? Because at points we're all guilty of it.
Yeah.
It's powerful information, the awareness, because then that allows you to recognize, wow, there's 24 hours in the day. Let's say I'm working for approximately 8 of them. If you're lucky, you're sleeping for about 8 of them.
Yeah.
And then that leaves, 8 hours left. And when you are aware and have the social awareness to recognize, oh, so in that 8 hours, how am I spending my time?
That's
What
good.
am I doing? It changes everything.
It does. That's such an interesting perspective. And, it reminds me, one, I definitely love a good Netflix or Amazon Prime original,
Yeah.
or Hulu. Shout out to Paradise on Hulu. It's interesting because all of that leads to work, though. If we don't maximize that 8 hours and get connected with nature or take time for ourselves or go back to journaling or potentially just pick up a book and read it. And you've seen firsthand how that lends to burnout and how that lends to toxic work environments and leadership gaps and all of these different things. What are the patterns though? Because I feel like life and just anything has a pattern. There's a step before that. What are the patterns that you're seeing most often that are leading to burnout and toxic work environments and leadership gaps and these things that are going on?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. I would say the patterns are, okay, there's a few different things here. There's people not being willing to quiet the noise. So there's literally a purposeful busy, purposeful scheduling lots of things, having lots of noise, never taking the time. There's lots of people who are really uncomfortable to slow down and just be still.
You're
And so
definitely speaking to me.
yeah. And that's a very real pattern, right? Being
Yeah.
continuously stacking on the tasks and having lots of
Yeah.
responsibilities. And for many people, they don't realize that when all of this is on deck, excuse me, there's the inability to connect with self, to really hear, what is it that I want? What is it that I need right now? What
That's
is it
good.
that's going to bring me peace? Because we're locked in and we're hearing all of the other noise, the family, the coworkers, the team, the partner, the friends, the news, like we're hearing all of this. And so I would say busy is a pattern.
That's good.
And there's an opportunity to be able to schedule some time, and it can start small for anybody. And like you said, this resonates for you, busy. You may want to start with just a 15-minute window per day where it's like disconnecting to connect and connecting with you so that you can get your creative ideas. You can have, a moment to think about what's next. What do you feel? What are you processing? What's feeling hard for you?
Yeah.
So I would say busy is absolutely a pattern. Avoidance is a huge pattern.
Yeah.
Right? That's something that I work with lots of clients on. And it's again, like, oh, look, I'll paint the house, but I don't want to do this thing, or focusing in all of the different places.
Everywhere else except.
Yeah, to avoid, and look, I do a lot of talking about healing and trauma informed work. And a lot of times that's like, ugh, people, that's the work people usually want to run from. So I'm tasked to figure out how to get people to recognize that going towards the thing is so much more liberating and actually, in a lot of cases, easier than trying to navigate their whole life going around stuff.
That's
So
good.
avoidance is really a pattern that I see play out. And it's problematic because things stack, and ultimately people need to come back to some of the things that need their attention. And for some, it happens, 40s, 50s, 60s. My oldest client is 82 and literally tried to outrun and, avoided and just kind of went on his journey all these years. And ultimately, when he hired me, he said, I want to feel worthy. I'm so tired of struggling with the childhood wounds.
That's so
And
good.
it's such a testament to how avoidance can only go but so far. And you're going to get to a point, whether it's 80 or whatever, where you want to look. So I would say avoidance is definitely another pattern. And what else I would say is my top three. I would say people pleasing is a very big pattern that I see play out, where people are moving away from what's important to them, how they want to live their life, what, mission they want to forward because so and so is, wanting them to do X, Y, or Z, or they are needed by all the people. And I would say those are very recurring patterns that are preventing people from getting to the next point of looking really deeper within.
That's such a powerful response. And I say that because I can see in my own life where I've probably leaned on all three of those at some point.
Yeah, me too.
I want to go back to when you mentioned kind of this stacking, this busy work, essentially, like constantly being busy. Where do we make this transition from this ladder mentality of like, all right, I got to get this done. I got to build this life. I got to create this opportunity, and I have to do.
Yeah.
How do we make the transition from taking time for space, but not feeling like we're being unproductive or bored or wasting time? Like,
Yeah.
walk me through that perspective.
So big. That's such a, a practice that I think we all are on, especially when we are, founders and leading, movements. It's really important to unsubscribe to hustle culture. And hustle culture is so real, right? I'm sure that, everyone listening, like, you can resonate on some level. And for you, Kyle, like, it's so tempting to get caught fully in this pattern of do, as you say, right? And just continue. I remember one time I was really, really sick and I was filming content, and I was still trying to show up and do this, do what I was up to for that particular week. And I was really, really sick. And when I look back, I see myself almost having like a green, hue. That's how sick I was.
Oh my God.
And I was like, wow, you were so caught in having to just show up and push through and no matter what, and show up and do. And I would say that the shift in this context, and it's powerful to become aware of this, it's where are we doing the most, but neglecting like being? Where are we not actually just settled into who we are as people and the leaders that we are and the work that we do? Because if we never slow down, there's not an opportunity to really appreciate and be with the magnificence of the journey.
That's
and
beautiful.
so, I think there's a fear piece that lingers in the background over here. For many, where if I slow down, will I be replaced? Will someone do more? Will I become irrelevant? And I think that really is the work that we get to do. Rest is equally as important as the hustle. And there's a balance there. We're not going to be able to show up and do the work that we do if we don't take time to recharge and replenish, So I think really looking at this is peeling back the layers of the metaphoric onion. Like, am I afraid that if I don't show up, I'm going to be replaced? Am I afraid that if I take a weekend with my family, everything's going to fall apart? Because then, by being mindful of that, we have the opportunity to look at, where can I lean into trust? Who are the people that I can actually lean on so that I can go have a beautiful weekend and know that I'm coming back and everything is still up and running? So I would say that is something that definitely comes to the surface when I think about people pausing long enough to recognize, like, are they fully locked into hustle culture? Where could they take a rest? And some people will say, oh, I'm going to go on a vacation and rest. And then they're laying on the beach with a laptop with all the things.
You're talking to me. You're talking to me.
Right?
I love these podcasts because I ask questions and I find that it's most relatable to our listeners, because it's really me really asking and interested in these things, because we're preparing to take our family to Charleston this weekend for my son's spring break. And I'm really battling. Do I leave my laptop at home, or do I bring it with me just in case? And it's that just in case mentality that keeps you tethered to the work and doesn't allow you to stay fully present in the moment. And like you said, in the journey.
Yeah, totally. One of the business coaches that I worked with when I first started my entrepreneurial journey in 2021, which has been a wild adventure, she always talks about, like, there's no emergencies in business, in your business, unless you're doing something where it's a life-saving, you are running an ambulance company, and, unless it's that type of business, there's no emergency. And so with that, if you receive a request for a proposal, you can respond to that, tomorrow, like if you are unavailable. And that changed everything for me, because in the beginning, again, I went from, and I believe you have an educational background as well.
Yeah.
Right. So I went from being a school psychologist, and on the 1st and the 15th, I go to my bank and there's my pay, right? It was always there. And now I'm navigating what it means to have to generate in order for, there to be
Yep.
funds in the bank. And that had me very much like responding very quickly and being very present and, being on. And it was fear that was really driving that for
I
me. And
agree.
so I'll never forget when she said that. And I thought about like, oh, wait, there's not a principle waiting for my response, in that moment where if
That's
I don't
good.
do it. And that changed everything. And it didn't have the pendulum swing all the way in the other direction where I sat on emails for weeks, but I
Yeah.
really was able to go to the family party or go to the events and know that on the, 2 days later or a day later, when I opens up the laptop, I sit down and respond and
To
do what I have
everything.
to do. Yeah. And it changes everything because being able to unplug in that way, I personally believe allows us to be better at the work that we do.
You spoke to me so much. So that means I got to leave my laptop and my work at home for 5 days. So this is going to be interesting. And then
Yeah.
we'll come back and we'll talk about how I felt and how hard it probably will be. And it's interesting. Like, how do you coach people on the grieving process that it probably takes for you to walk away or take that
Mm.
time or be present with yourself? Like, it's difficult to be able to, because all of those thoughts and ideas and responsibilities and targets and tasks are flowing through your mind. And it's challenging when all of those things are flowing in your mind and you're a high achiever to not want to take action. So
Oh,
can you
yeah.
talk to that person that's listening in that tries to sit on the couch or sit outside on the porch or does different things, and then all of those thoughts just go haywire, and then they feel like they need to get up from that space and go take action?
Yeah, thank you for that because that's a great question, and it makes me think about you may want to take your laptop, right? Hear me out on this. You
Yeah.
may want to take your laptop, but what you actually may want to do is allow yourself, 90 minutes of focused time that happens at a particular window during the day so that you are able to do what it is that you want to do. And then the rest of the time you get to be present. Because I also think about the person who potentially holds them to this, leave their laptop at home, and really they're not present on the whole vacation anyway,
That's
because
good.
now their mind is back at the right, like it's not there. So if you potentially go about instead of working, we tend to be very like, you're my people. I could tell we're very like, I'm going to do a thing or I'm not going to do a thing at all. Right.
Yep.
There's not this like middle.
There's no
There's
gray
not
area.
this. Exactly. And the win here is to recognize, well, there actually gets to be a middle ground, and it could potentially be 60 minutes or 90 minutes of focused time. And then when that computer closes,
You're done.
now you're able to be around with everything that's surrounding you and feel very different. So I often talk about um, scheduling distractions, and if work potentially feels like a distraction on vacation, that may be the thing to actually schedule. And so it's like 4 to 5 p.m. or 4 to 5:30, this is what I'm doing. And that will allow for you to really channel all of your energy, effort, concentration, and not feel too far behind where you're not present with the people who are around you.
That's so good. And that is the type of culture that I would even want to create, not even just for me, but then within the organization, because that's
Yeah.
leadership. And one thing that you mentioned in just kind of stalking you online is that you make it clear that leadership requires more than just competence. It
Yeah.
requires emotional intelligence and capacity. Can you
Totally.
talk through, I guess, for me, for our listeners, like what is the difference between just a competent leader and emotionally equipped leader? And why is that so important in the workplace?
I love that. So yeah, I mean, I wonder if you and others that are listening have ever experienced a leader, a supervisor, who had the skill set but was not equipped to be in the leadership position.
Hmm.
Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, 100%.
Right? So that to me is an example of someone who has the competence. They know the work, but they lack the ability to be with people and effectively forward teams, lead teams. They lack this awareness, and these are the emotional intelligence skills. they lack the awareness, they lack impulse control.
That's
I mean,
good.
I've had supervisors when impulse control is close to none, because I would say it's never zero, because we are all on a spectrum of,
Yeah.
and it's where we perform. I've had supervisors who had very little impulse control.
Hey, it's Kyle. Sorry to interrupt your programming, but I got a quick culture check for you. How's your team's energy right now? I mean, literally, right now. Are people feeling inspired? Or are they just showing up? See, here's the truth. Culture doesn't change because we talk about it. It changes because we live it actively every single day. And that's what I help organizations do. Build contagious cultures that people actually want to be a part of. Through keynote talks, interactive trainings, and hands-on consulting, I help leaders transform the way their teams connect, perform, and grow. So if your culture needs a little bit of spark, let's light it up together. Visit theculturelab.org, again, theculturelab.org, or connect with me directly on LinkedIn at Kyle S. King to learn more about how we can work together. Because remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching. Now let's get back to the program.
And working with them was not fun. It was really a challenging experience, because there's constant reaction, there's constant lashing out. So that is the difference. Someone can know the work, they can potentially create, analyze a data set with the best of them, but when they have to sit down to share that information with the team, if they lack social skills and they lack the ability to communicate and communicate assertively, which assertiveness is an emotional intelligence skill, not aggressive. Aggression is something different.
Yeah.
It changes everything. So from my time in the schools, I worked as the school psychologist, as I shared, for 14 years. I don't know if it's just all over, but I happen to be in buildings where my administration, they had the competence to be effective, educational leaders, but they did not have the emotional intelligence skill set that made them good at it.
Why, man, this opens up such a bigger topic. Why do we then continue organizationally to promote people solely based on output and production versus emotional readiness? Because in my opinion, I believe that emotional intelligence is much more important than just skill set, because I can teach you how to run a school, but it's just something about how to deal with people or how to empathize and how to listen. That's much more important. So why are we continuing organizationally in the culture of America, continuing to support or promote people only solely on the basis of production, measurables, and quantifiable output versus their emotional readiness to take on this responsibility?
I think it comes down to money in a lot of cases. I think that, depending upon the leader, if productivity and results and financial gain, which, for the most part, organizations, that's the bigger mission.
Yeah.
If that is, what is seen, tunnel vision, and focused on, then that will be rewarded. It's going to be who gets the most done, who generates the most results, who gets the most sales. Boom, they get rewarded. There's no looking at, well, after that person in a month, let's say, gets the most sales, they walk into the conference room and interact with people in some wild, crazy, disrespectful way. The leader who values that, they are going to pump money into training and resources and leadership development, and making sure that they're not only focusing on results, they're focusing on the person who's generating the results. And I think that's a winning strategy when you really zoom out from that and look at it, because if you are focusing on the person who is generating the results, even if they're creating great results at, from, let's say, day one, at some point, we are humans, we're not machines. At some point, we start to, break down or have life throw curveballs and real, people experience loss, people experience all sorts of things. If you are regularly pumping in resources into building up the person, you are going to wind up with like a sustainable model of creating results, like versus, okay, let the person produce, until they crash and burn. And then it's like, okay, now what? So I would say organizations and, different small businesses, all different leaders, if they value the team and they recognize that until the robots come in and take over on, on all the levels, it's people, and people have emotions, and people experience hardship, and people have ups and downs, and are on this spectrum of emotional intelligence, and some are more developed than others. But when you regularly pump in, I think you really get a different level of outcome.
That's so good. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. This was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I was sharing with her that when I was younger, I got caught in a riptide, and I was swimming out too far in Jersey.
Wow.
And there was a bigger wave coming. I went under, and then I tried to come up and breathe, and then the undercurrent caught me. And it was maybe 20 or 30 minutes later where I found myself on the beach, and my dad, brought me back to essentially life, because I went unconscious. And we talked about that and connecting it with this idea of American organizations always having this culture of wanting to push through and keep swimming, rather than just allowing myself in the sea to just let it bring me back up naturally and slowing down. Can you talk about the leader that's listening, or can you talk to the leader that's listening right now that continues to get rewarded for pushing through and showing up and all of these different things, or the mom that recently had a child that is experiencing postpartum that is forced to still come back to work in this culture? Can you talk to them, or what would you say to them about the importance of slowing down and reflecting?
Yeah, so this is powerful. So the first thing that comes to me is a realization that I had when I was in my role as a school psychologist. The role changed a lot when I started in 2026 until I leave. And there was somewhere around the final 3-year mark, I want to say, where I was burning the candle at both ends. I was dealing with, the system that was changing, the constant juggling of new regulations and new expectations and compliance, and the supervisors and the parents and the kids and all of the things, limited resources and services. And I remember driving home one day. I had a migraine, like literally for the last couple of hours of work. And I was driving home, and my mother called, and I was very like snippy. And I was like, I had a day and I got to go. And I can't, I didn't even want to hear my own voice. Like I just needed to get home.
Yeah.
And I hung up with her, and I got to my apartment, and I thought to myself, like, do you see what you like? Look at what you're doing to yourself. Like, you are literally in this. You are so in it that you're not recognizing that, one of the most important people in your life calls, and you're getting off the phone with an attitude because you don't have the capacity. And I remember sitting on my couch that day thinking to myself, if something happens to you because of the stress and the overwhelm and the burnout really from this role, all that they're going to do in the school, and this is a really hard pill to swallow, but all they're going to do is like, hi, this is PS, da, da, da. We need another school psychologist here. Okay, thanks. And that will be it. And I will be replaced, right? Because the system. And when I had that realization, everything changed, because I thought to myself, wait a minute, it is on me, my responsibility to take care of self, to prioritize. If I need a day off, take the day off. If, whatever, if I need to say no, be willing to say no. That is my work to do, because they are never going to say, Andrea, you are working so hard. You really seem stressed. You should go home, right? Like, it's never going to happen. Exactly. So for anybody listening, I would really encourage you to think about, what is it that you need to sustain the work that you do? How can you take care of yourself? Does that mean you may need some scheduled quiet time? Does that mean you need to get better at saying, like, upholding boundaries? Sharing what it is that, hey, this is a lot that I'm handling. I'm not going to be able to meet that deadline. Can we bump it back 1 week? I want to do it and I want to do it in excellence, but this is too much for me. We really need to recognize what we need. Otherwise, we will run ourselves like in, the hamster wheel. And then ultimately, when we crash out and burn, what happens is hi, we need another, da, da, da,
Yeah.
and that's very hard to process because we like to think that we are having this amazing impact, and in a lot of cases we are, but in order to continue it, we have to really take care of self.
That's
So
so
for everybody listening, if you are on the track to burnout and you are fully locked in, doing all the things, putting your health to the side to meet deadlines, to show up, it's really an urgent call to action that this is not a rehearsal.
mm,
We hear it all the time, but it really is not. And at the end of the road, with my work, I often speak of, I go down to the end of the road. Are we going to feel like, wow, I really showed up and made all those deadlines like at the job? Is that really what's going to matter? It's not. And so, your loved ones, your health, the joyful moments you create, the passion work that you get to do, the lives you get to impact, that can all be done in excellence when you feel good and you take care
mm.
of you. And that's what I would say to everybody. Like, you are not replaceable. Don't allow yourself to get caught up into a system or a cycle that can sort of allow that to happen.
This has been so refreshing, and I
Um,
just appreciate you so much. What's next for you? Like, how can people that are listening in support, uplift, and empower the impact that you're leading as well?
Yeah, thank you. So what's next for me? I recently wrote my first book. I'm really, really excited. Yeah, super psyched. And that is going to be coming out the end of the summer or early fall. So I am like right now in preparation for that big milestone. So that I would say, stay tuned and join me if you are interested in learning more about the work that I do with emotional intelligence, with school communities, organizations. I also coach women in midlife. That's like my passion work. Social media, I would say a lot of what I'm up to, I share about that. But my commitment is really to continue to have conversations like this. I do believe that when we have conversations like this and people tune in, they're able to hear something, one thing that will have the culture of their organization, their workplace, their family, their friend group change. And I think that it really is a ripple effect. We start to have one conversation can ultimately start to impact so
Oh,
many different groups. And I love that. So, my commitment for my own movement is to spread the word of intentional healing and wellness, which, it's really this idea too of healing the limiting beliefs, right? For someone
mm,
who's locked into hustle culture and they're afraid to step back, that's a limiting belief that warrants healing so that they can show up and do the thing, but also, enjoy their life. Right.
yeah.
So it's not this idea of healing and it's all attached to mental health. It's this idea of like heal the part of you that is locked into perfectionism because it's robbing you from the opportunity to put work out in the world. That's something that needs healing. So that's really what I am up to, what I will continue to, be talking about and sharing. But thank you for asking that.
Where can people find you online?
Yeah. So on Instagram and LinkedIn, that's where I generally hang out the most. I am Andrea Mancuso. Um, my website is iamandreamancuso.com. And that's pretty much where I hang out. Email and all things will lead to me. So, and I always tell, after I'm like with people on podcasts, I always say, if you are listening and something opens for you and you want to share it out, shoot me an email. I get messages from people all the time that say, wow, I heard this and I am interested in shifting, and just to let me know, like, oh, this is how I'm going to do things differently. That makes me happy to hear, what opened up for you. Um, and I would love to hear from whoever it is that, is having moments, the light bulbs go off as a result of the conversation.
My light bulbs have definitely went off this whole conversation. I feel like
Yeah.
this is a public therapy session, so nobody does.
Right.
I'm definitely going to leave my laptop at home, and I'm going to time block my distractions prior to us leaving, so that the things that are priority can get established and finalized, so that I can be fully present through the
Mm,
whole time. You said so much, and I even want to re-listen to this and take down notes and really begin to implement some of these things. Andrea, you're such a light. The
okay.
work that you're doing is so necessary. It's really it has been such a powerful conversation about emotional capacity and how important that is to not just create psychological safety within organizations, but it starts internally. It starts
Okay.
at our home. It starts in our engagements. It starts within ourselves before we can be the person to lead these initiatives or advance these missions forward. Like, we have to become the person first.
Yeah.
I thank you so very much.
Oh, you're
Um,
welcome. I'm
one of
so
the
excited for your family. I'm so excited for you, for the vacation and what it's going to, look like, and for you to really, on the other side of it, what will open by way of your work and your impact and all of it. Because I know for sure when we really get to take the break, it's like, especially for people who are generating ideas and doing all this, there's an abundance that comes, so I'm excited for everything that happens for you.
Oh no, I'm excited too. I really am. Our listeners listening in, if you enjoyed this episode just as much as I have, write a review, share it, like the episode, and subscribe to the channel. But before you do all of that, go check out Andrea online. Go
You.
follow her, go connect with her, and go continue to do this work internally. Take your time, take your space, slow down so that you could be able to become the person that your organization, your family, and your community needs. One of the questions that we always ask our listeners is, what type of culture are you spreading? The energy you bring is the culture you create. It's another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and we will see you all next episode.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks for tuning in to the Contagious Culture Podcast. If this episode challenged or inspired you, hey, take a second to share it with someone who's building culture in their world. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself join the movement. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube at Kyle S. King for more tips, tools, and methodologies to be able to help you create this ecosystem of absolute excellence. Until next time, lead boldly, live intentionally, and remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching.